The doomed battle. The sky above Velithor 9 burned. The last planet of the free colonies was under siege. Thousands of Dominion warships surrounded it, their massive spiked hulls blocking out the light of the system's twin suns. On the surface, the people of Velithor 9 watched in silence. They had fought for years. They had hoped for a miracle. But now, hope was gone. The Galactic Dominion, the most powerful empire in the known galaxy, had finally come to end them. In the command center of the last free colony base, General Kaler stood before a holographic display. Red markers covered the screen, each one a Dominion warship. The enemy had sent an entire extermination fleet to wipe them out. "We don't have a chance," whispered one of his officers. Kaler clenched his fists. He knew it was true. Their ships were outnumbered 100 to 1. Their weapons were outdated. Their defenses were weak. The Dominion had won. A deep, rumbling voice echoed over the planet's comm systems. "This is Overlord HFY of the Dominion. Your resistance is over. Surrender now, and your people will be enslaved. Fight, and you will all die." The message was clear. The Dominion never took prisoners unless they were useful. The rest were erased. Kaler closed his eyes. He could already see the future. His people in chains. His world in flames. He turned to his officers. "We fight," he said. They all nodded. They had always known this day would come. Above the planet, the Dominion fleet prepared to fire. Thousands of cannons locked onto Velithor 9. The order was given. Erase them. The sky was filled with fire. Then something changed. Without warning, Dominion ships lost power. Their engines flickered. Their weapons went offline. Confused, Overlord HFY roared. "What is happening?" His officers scrambled for answers. "Unknown energy surge. It's shutting down our systems." Ivar turned to the viewing screen. The sky outside was darkening. Something was coming. Something huge. A ripple in space appeared, like a hole tearing open in the fabric of reality. And then, they arrived. Millions of ships. Massive, towering war machines that dwarfed even the largest Dominion battleships. Their hulls were black as the void, their shapes sharp and unfamiliar. And on each ship's surface, 2 words were displayed in bright, glowing letters. United Earth. A new voice echoed across the battlefield. Deep, cold, unstoppable. "This is the Terran fleet. You have one chance. Surrender now, or be erased." The Galactic Dominion had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had crushed countless civilizations. They had never known fear. Until now, the silence in the Dominion's command ship was absolute. Overlord HFY stood frozen, his red eyes locked onto the massive fleet that had just appeared. His claws dug into the cold metal of his throne. His species, the Drakvash, had ruled the galaxy for over 5,000 years. They had burned worlds, enslaved entire civilizations, and crushed any resistance with overwhelming firepower. But now, for the first time, HFY felt something unfamiliar. Fear. The sky above Velithor 9 had gone black, swallowed by an ocean of unfamiliar warships. They were everywhere. The Dominion fleet, once the largest in the sector, looked small in comparison. HFY's second-in-command, Admiral Vorka, struggled to speak. "These ships. They weren't on any known records. Who are they?" Before HFY could answer, a deep voice cut through the comms like a blade. "This is Admiral Richard Graves of the United Terran Fleet. You have one chance. Surrender now, or be erased." The voice was cold, controlled. There was no anger, no arrogance, just a simple statement of fact. The impossible scan. "Run a full scan." HFY barked. His officers scrambled to obey. A few seconds later, the results flashed onto the command screen. The data made no sense. Ship classification, unknown. Weapon systems, unknown. Shield strength, unknown. Total ships detected, too many to count. The Dominion scanners, the most advanced in the galaxy, could not analyze a single Terran ship. Their systems were jammed. Their weapons were offline. How is this possible? Vorka whispered. Sci-Fi's claws tightened. It didn't matter. This fleet, whatever it was still outnumbered. The Dominion did not surrender. Ever. The first shot. Kavar straightened, his voice filled with forced confidence. Fire all weapons. Now. Across the Dominion fleet, warships powered up their main cannons. Even with system interference, their weapons were powerful enough to destroy moons. Beams of red energy tore across space. Hundreds, then thousands. The Dominion fleet had fired the first shot. The attack never landed. The beams vanished. The torpedoes detonated in mid-space. The Dominion's strongest weapons did nothing. For the first time, a quiet, sinking realization spread through the Dominion fleet. The humans had let them fire first. They wanted to prove a point. A low hum echoed through the battlefield as the largest Terran ship, a Titan-sized war vessel, 10 times bigger than any Dominion dreadnought, moved forward. A single pulse of blue energy fired from its hull. The beam sliced through the Dominion fleet like paper. Kaivar watched in horror as 1,000 Dominion warships were erased in seconds. His fleet, his empire's pride, was dying faster than he could understand. The final warning. A new message appeared across every Dominion ship's screen. Your weapons are useless. Your defenses are weak. You cannot win. Surrender, or be destroyed. The words were not a threat. They were a statement, a final warning. For the first time in history, the Galactic Dominion was on the losing side of a war. Kaivar stared at the burning wreckage of his fleet. His mind screamed to fight, to resist, to do something. But deep inside, he already knew the truth. The war was over, and it had ended in seconds. The silence inside the Dominion's command ship was heavier than the void itself. Overlord Xivar's claws trembled as he watched the battlefield. His mighty fleet, the strongest in the galaxy, was being torn apart like paper. His once invincible warships had fallen without even scratching the enemy. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. And yet, the evidence was right in front of him. Thousands of burning Dominion ships. Millions of soldiers dead in seconds. And the Terran fleet, untouched. Admiral Vorka spoke first, his voice barely a whisper. Tell you what? Are they? Kaivar had no answer. The transmission. A sharp tone echoed through the command deck. An incoming transmission. It wasn't a request. It was a command. The screen flickered, and a human appeared. He was older, his face lined with scars. His eyes were cold, like a predator that had seen far too many battles. His uniform bore the insignia of United Earth Fleet Command. Admiral Richard Graves. He stared at Kaivar for a long moment before speaking. You have ruled with terror. You have enslaved and slaughtered freely. That ends today. His voice was calm, but there was no mercy in it. Surrender now, or be erased. The Dominion's pride. The bridge crew of the Dominion flagship turned to Kaivar, waiting for his command. The Drakvash did not surrender. It was written in their history, their blood, their very nature. Surrender was death. Kaivar's body tensed. His claws dug into the armrest of his throne. They still had millions of soldiers, fleets across the galaxy, entire planets filled with war machines. This was only one battle. If they retreated now, they could regroup, rebuild. His decision was made. He stood tall, his voice steady. You dare threaten the Dominion. He snarled. We are eternal. We will never bow to. A quiet sigh came from the human admiral. Not anger, not frustration, just disappointment. Very well. Then, the transmission cut, and the Terran fleet opened fire. The wrath of humanity. The Dominion had never witnessed such precision. Every human warship moved in perfect sync, like a single unstoppable machine. Blue energy lanced through the void. hypersonic railguns, antimatter warheads, kinetic slugs moving at near-light speed, weapons far beyond anything the Dominion had ever seen. Within seconds, another 1,000 Dominion ships were wiped out. Entire fleets disintegrated before they could even turn to flee. A moon-sized battle station, armed with planetary cannons, shields capable of tanking the supernova, was torn apart in a single volley. There was no battle, only slaughter. The Emperor's terror. On the Dominion's capital world, the Supreme Emperor of the Drakvash watched the massacre in real time. His advisors trembled. The palace was silent. Never, in 5,000 years of conquest, had they faced a force like this. One of the younger officers finally broke the silence. "Your Majesty, what do we do?" The Emperor's scaled hand gripped the throne so hard it cracked. There was only one answer. "We beg." The final plea. Back in the war zone, Sci-Fi's command ship was one of the last remaining vessels. Every screen on the bridge showed one thing: total Dominion fleet strength remaining 3%. They had lost. Sci-Fi's throat was dry. His hands shook. He had mocked the weak races of the galaxy for surrendering. He had laughed at their fear. Now he understood it. He forced himself to speak. "Open a transmission to the humans." The screen flickered. Admiral Graves appeared once more, his expression unchanged. Sci-Fi's pride shattered. He lowered his head. His voice was barely more than a whisper. "We surrender." Graves said nothing for a long moment. Then his reply came. Too late. And the final attack began. The Galactic Dominion had fought thousands of wars. They had crushed rebellions, exterminated planets, and enslaved entire civilizations. Their war fleets had ruled the stars for over 5,000 years. They had called themselves invincible. But against humanity, they had lasted less than an hour. The last stand. Overlord HFY watched his empire burn. His fleet, once the terror of the galaxy, was reduced to debris drifting in space. The wreckage of thousands of Dominion warships floated lifelessly, their shattered hulls glowing from the residual heat of Terran weapons. On his flagship's cracked viewing window, he could still see the United Earth fleet moving methodically, wiping out the last remnants of Dominion resistance. It was not war. It was annihilation. "Report." Sci-Fi whispered, though he already knew the answer. A terrified officer stammered. "We've lost all contact with the Supreme War Council. The core defense fleet is gone. The capital world is under siege." Sci-Fi's vision blurred. Everything they had built, everything they had conquered, it was all over. And the humans had done it without losing a single ship. The scream of the capital. On Drakvash Prime, the capital world of the Dominion, terror reigned. The sky was filled with *** black silhouettes. *** human warships, their presence blotting out the stars. The city-sized fortresses that had once stood as symbols of Dominion power now trembled as human drop pods rained down. The planetary defenses, the strongest in the galaxy, never had a chance. The planetary shield failed instantly. The orbital cannons exploded before they could fire. And the humans landed. Unlike the Dominion, humanity did not rely on sheer numbers. Every Terran soldier was a walking war machine. Their exosuits made them faster, stronger, deadlier than anything the Dominion had ever faced. They moved through the capital like specters of death, eliminating all resistance with brutal precision. The Dominion's proudest warriors, the Imperial Guard, fell within minutes. Their emperor, the ruler of the greatest empire in history, was dragged from his throne, screaming. The Dominion had once laughed at the suffering of the weak. Now, the weak laughed at them. A message to the galaxy. Across the stars, the enslaved races of the galaxy watched in awe. For centuries, they had suffered under the Dominion. Their worlds had been burned, their people slaughtered. They had dreamed of freedom, but none had ever dared to hope. Until now. The United Earth Fleet sent a single message to the entire galaxy. The war is over. The Dominion is no more. The oppressed are now free. Humanity does not seek conquest. We do not seek power. We seek justice. For the first time in 5,000 years, the galaxy was free, and the name of their saviors would never be forgotten. Humanity had arrived. The Galactic Dominion had ruled for 5,000 years. Their fleets had crushed every rebellion. Their armies had burned worlds without mercy. Their rulers had declared themselves eternal. But now, in the ruins of their once great empire, all that remained was silence. The fall of Overlord Sci-Fi. The throne room of the Dominion's Supreme War Council was in chaos. The massive chamber, once filled with the most powerful beings in the galaxy, was now a scene of panic and despair. Dominion warlords, admirals, and nobles, once untouchable, were now desperate, trembling creatures. Some screamed for evacuation. Others called for surrender. A few still clung to the delusion that they could fight back. At the center of it all stood Overlord Sci-Fi. The once mighty ruler of the Dominion had aged a lifetime in hours. His golden armor was cracked, his once fiery red eyes now filled with something he had never felt before. Hopelessness. He stared at the massive holographic display before him. It showed the entire Dominion's territories, stretching across thousands of star systems. One by one, the star systems blinked out. Human forces were everywhere. Entire Dominion fleets had been shut down remotely. Human AI systems had hijacked their networks, locking down planets before their defenses could activate. Governors surrendered without a fight. Slaves turned on their masters. Whole sectors begged for mercy. And humanity gave them only one choice. The last transmission. A sharp beep echoed through the throne room. A transmission. From the Terran fleet. Sci-Fi hesitated. Then, with shaking hands, he answered. Admiral Richard Graves appeared on the holoscreen. His face was unreadable, his cold eyes staring straight into Sci-Fi's soul. It is over. Sci-Fi clenched his fists. We can negotiate. Graves tilted his head, not in amusement, not in curiosity, in disappointment. Negotiate. The word hung in the air. Graves leaned forward. His voice was quiet, controlled, deadly. You never negotiated with the weak. You never spared the helpless. You ruled with terror, Overlord Sci-Fi. You built an empire of suffering. Now, you will know what it feels like to be powerless. Sci-Fi felt his stomach twist. He was powerless. The Terran fleet had not just won. They had never even struggled. They had destroyed the most powerful empire in history without losing a single ship. This was not a war. It had never been a war. It was judgment, and Sci-Fi was found guilty. The Dominion surrenders. Across the galaxy, the remaining Dominion warlords fell to their knees. The last fleet commanders sent out a desperate signal. We surrender. We surrender. On every Dominion-controlled world, the same scene played out. Slaves rose up. Masters fell. Dominion banners were torn down. For the first time in 5,000 years, the galaxy was free. The trial of monsters. Sci-Fi and the surviving Dominion rulers were taken to a Terran war tribunal. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions watched as the once mighty conquerors stood in chains. One by one, their crimes were listed. The massacres, the enslavement of entire species, the destruction of innocent worlds. For every act of cruelty they had committed, there was evidence. And for every crime, there was only one sentence: justice, the rise of a new order. But humanity did not claim the throne of the fallen Dominion. They did not declare themselves rulers. They did not demand tribute. Instead, they did something no one expected. They gave power back to the free species. A new alliance was formed, the Galactic Coalition. Humanity was part of it, but they did not lead. They only guided, protected, ensured peace. When asked why, Admiral Graves gave a simple answer: We do not conquer. We only end tyrants. And so, the era of dominion rule came to an end. In its place, a new future began. A future where humanity was not feared, but respected. The galactic dominion was dead. Its warlords, once untouchable, were now prisoners. Its fleets, once the terror of the stars, were now wreckage drifting in the void. Its capital world, once the beating heart of an empire, lay silent. But the galaxy did not celebrate immediately. After 5,000 years of tyranny, freedom felt unreal. To the billions of beings who had suffered under the dominion, the idea that it was truly over seemed impossible. What came next? Would humanity take their place as the new rulers? Would they demand tribute? Would they become just another empire? The galaxy held its breath, and humanity answered. The Liberation Fleet. Instead of enforcing rule, humanity enforced order. The United Earth Fleet did not seize territory. It did not plant flags. Instead, it moved system by system, world by world, ensuring that no remnants of the Dominion's tyranny remained. Where there were slave camps, they were torn down. Where there were oppressed species, they were given back their freedom. Where there was chaos, stability was restored. But humanity did not place themselves as rulers. Instead, they created the Galactic Coalition, a council of all free species where no single race could hold absolute power. It was the first true government of the galaxy, and humanity refused to lead it. We did not fight to rule. Admiral Graves declared in a broadcast seen by billions, "We fought so no one would ever rule like the Dominion again." The hunt for the tyrants. Though the war was over, there was still work to do. Many of the worst Dominion warlords had escaped into the dark corners of space. These were the ones who had committed genocide, who had wiped out entire species, who had seen themselves as gods among mortals. They thought they could hide, but they were wrong. Humanity sent the Black Fleet, a division of stealth warships, armed with technology so advanced that even the most powerful Dominion scanners could not detect them. Their mission was simple: find the war criminals, bring them to justice, or erase them. No place was safe, no bunker deep enough, no fortress strong enough. One by one, the warlords were found. Some were captured, dragged in chains before the Galactic Tribunal. Their trials were broadcast across the stars, a message to all who had once served tyranny. Others were not given a trial, because some crimes were too great, and for those, the Black Fleet delivered only silence. The last warlord, the most wanted Dominion warlord, High Executor Vorsk, had hidden himself on a distant, dead world beyond known space. He thought himself safe. He was wrong. One night, as he sat in his underground bunker, his guards standing watch, a soft whisper filled the room. Vorsk. The warlord's blood ran cold. The lights flickered. The guards turned, weapons raised, but there was no one there. Then, in the blink of an eye, the room was full of shadows. Terran operatives, clad in black exosuits, their faces hidden behind blank, emotionless visors. Vorsk tried to run. He didn't get far. The last thing he saw before his vision faded to black was a symbol feared by every Dominion warlord, a symbol that meant the hunt was over. The Black Fleet had found him, and the last monster of the Dominion was gone. The future begins. With the last of the Dominion's war criminals either captured or eliminated, the galaxy could finally breathe. For the first time in history, no empire ruled the stars. Instead, there was peace. There were still tensions. There were still old wounds that would take centuries to heal. But now, for the first time, the galaxy had a choice: to build, to grow, to be more than a battlefield. And at the center of it all, humanity stood, not as rulers, but as protectors. Their message to the galaxy was clear: we will never seek power. We will never demand tribute. We will only ask one thing: that tyranny never rises again. And with that, the age of justice began. The Dominion was gone. The warlords were no more. The galaxy stood at the dawn of a new age. And yet, humanity did not stay. One by one, their warships vanished from orbit. Their ground forces, once feared across the stars, withdrew from conquered worlds. The Black Fleet, which had hunted the last Dominion warlords, disappeared into the void. Some thought it was a trick. Others feared that humanity was merely waiting for the perfect moment to seize power. But as the weeks turned into months, and months into years, the truth became clear. Humanity had left. The day humanity departed. The Galactic Coalition, the new government formed after the Dominion's fall, held its first official session in the grand halls of the liberated capital world. Leaders from hundreds of species gathered, each granted an equal voice, an equal vote. But there was one empty seat, the one meant for humanity. At the opening of the session, a single transmission played across every screen, sent from Admiral Richard Graves himself. His voice was steady, his message undeniable. We have done what we came to do. The tyrants are gone. The war is over. The future is now yours to shape. Humanity will not rule you. We will not decide your fate. That is your right. He paused for a moment, his gaze unwavering. But know this, should another dominion rise, should tyranny take hold again, we will return. The screen went dark. And that was the last the galaxy saw of the United Earth Fleet. The mystery of humanity. In the years that followed, speculation ran wild. Where had humanity gone? Why had they left? Why did they not claim power when they had the chance? Some believed they had returned to their home system, sealing themselves away behind technological barriers no one could breach. Others whispered of hidden fleets, watching from the edges of known space, waiting for the day their intervention would be needed once more. And some, the more paranoid, feared that humanity had not left at all, that they were still among them, unseen, guiding events from the shadows. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never forget. The myth, the warning, the promise. For generations, stories of humanity's wrath were passed down. Parents warned their children of what had happened to the Dominion, of how the mightiest empire in history had been crushed in mere moments. Governments reminded their people of the oath humanity had made. Do not become tyrants. Do not seek to rule over the weak. Do not forget the fate of the Dominion. Because if they did, if any species ever sought to rebuild what had been destroyed, humanity would know, and they would return. The galaxy's new rulers understood one thing above all else. It was not fear that kept them from repeating history. It was not power struggles or politics that kept them in check. It was not treaties or laws that ensured peace. It was the knowledge that out there, in the darkness between the stars, humanity was still watching, waiting, silent. And if they were ever needed again, they would come back. The war had ended, but the legend of humanity had just begun.